Tyler Tolman here from Conscious Lifestyler, and today I'd like to talk a little bit about biblical foods, Bible foods and biblical fasting. And when I talk about the Bible, there are many different forms, many different literatures, many different books. We have the Quran, we have the Bible, we have the Talmud, we have all kinds of different books that exist for all different religions. And if you look into these religions, you'll find out that a lot of them were really big into fasting. There are certain times in the year where they'll take out a whole 30 days. Some religions teach that one day per week you should fast for the entire day. There's all kinds of different teachings, but it's obvious that fasting was a big part of spiritual belief. You look at people like Gandhi, you look at people like Buddha, Siddhartha. And these people that were fasting long periods of time, they were doing it for very specific reasons, not just the physical. But another thing that's talked about in the Bible a lot is food. And I'd like to talk a little bit about biblical food, and a little bit about meat, and a little bit about nuts and seeds, and maybe dates and figs and grains. And a lot of people say, well, Tyler, in the Bible, I read the Bible and I'm really big, into that. And I look at the Bible and I see it as an acronym. BIBLE stands for Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth. TM. Kind of cool, huh? Anyways, they'll say, Tyler, in the Bible, I see meat all through it. It's talking about eating meat. Meat's good for you. It's like, well, let's look in the Bible and actually see what's going on there. So if you open up the Bible and you go to the first chapters in Genesis, if this is basic instructions before leaving Earth, and it's all information about how to be healthy, how to have good relationships, how to live a long, healthy life, that's basically what the Bible is. How to deal with other people, how to deal with yourself, a lot of different issues. But in the very beginning, in Genesis, it says, in Genesis, I think 1:29 it is, "Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of the earth, and every fruit which comes from a tree yielding seed, to be your meat." So essentially, if you break that first part of the Bible down, it's saying that any herb or fruit or vegetable that contains seeds should be used for meat. What it's saying is that those are the foods that will strengthen us. Those are the foods that will give us life and health and joy. And it establishes that and says that they call it meat. That's what it calls it. So anytime after the first part of the Bible where it's talking about meat, it's talking about fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and grains. It's talking about those types of foods that have seed. So really when it's talking about the meat that we are talking about, because somewhere in history somebody decided to change that word meat and call the flesh of dead animals meat. Oh, let's call that meat because that's a healthy thing. Maybe it can confuse people and we'll think that meat is essential for protein and all kinds of other things. But really when it comes down to it, flesh was called flesh in the Bible. So if you go back to the Bible and read it and look at where it talks about flesh and look at where it talks about meat with the proper understanding of what those words mean, you'll have an entirely different view of what the Bible is talking about. Another thing that I'll touch on there is Daniel from the Old Testament of the Bible. Daniel was brought into a situation of the time of Babylon. And Babylon basically was the biggest, most powerful city or country of all time. And it was ruled by a king by the name of King Nebuchadnezzar. Now King Nebuchadnezzar basically wanted to expand his kingdom. He wanted to grow. He wanted to be a world ruler basically. So he's very smart, and he sent out his emissaries all around the different known parts of the world to extrapolate and bring back all of the fairest of flesh of young men. Men without blemish, it said. No blemishes, no issues, no things going on, but strong, healthy men. So that he could bring back and put them in a situation for 3 years of training them in arts and sciences, mathematics, language, warfare, and all of these things in this encampment of about 3,000 to 5,000 young men, so that after 3 years he could appoint his seers and his advisors and his captains and his generals to go out and rule the world. Pretty smart thing. In this process, they brought these 4 guys in, and it's believed they were Essenes. They were from an Essene type group of living that observed nature, observed the way things grew, and lived a very specific lifestyle. So in this lifestyle, it wasn't really conducive for flesh. So when King Nebuchadnezzar offered the food to all these 3,000 to 5,000 young men, they all accepted the king's food, which was the best of the best. But Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused to eat the king's meat and said, "Give us pulse to eat and water to drink." Very interesting. Now at the time there was a captain by the name of Melzar, who was in charge of providing the daily food for everybody in the encampment. And when Melzar brought the king's food and they refused to eat it, he said, "Look guys, if everybody else is eating the king's food, the best of the best, the meats and all the amazing things that he has available, and you guys are eating twigs and berries, nuts, seeds, and grains and the stuffed pulse, you're going to fade away while all these other guys are doing really great. Then if the king finds out I've been feeding you something differently and you're not doing the best, he'll cut my head off. It's my job to feed you the best of the best." So Daniel says in Daniel 1:12 of the Bible, "Prove thy servants, I beseech thee, and give us 10 days to prove to you, by eating pulse and drinking water, we will appear brighter upon our countenance and fatter upon our flesh," which meant they would actually look stronger. So Melzar says, "Okay, we'll give 10 days to you guys to prove this." So they took away the king's food for 10 days, gave them this food called pulse and water. After a period of 10 days, the captain looked at him and says, "Okay, it looks like you guys are actually doing a lot better." So they removed the portion of the king's food away for the entire 3-year period. After 3 years, the king himself and all his advisors came in literally to observe the 3,000 to 5,000 young men and to test them in all different areas. Now what it says is that 4 guys, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were found to be brighter and more intelligent than everyone in the entire realm, including the king's personal advisors. King Nebuchadnezzar said they were found to be 10 times more intelligent and more learned than anyone he had ever met in his realm. And on top of that, they were found to be stronger than everyone else. So this is a really interesting story that just starts with, eliminating some things from our belief system and eating some very specific foods and basically enhancing intelligence and all these things. So I recommend maybe reading some parts of the Bible if you're into that, and really researching and finding out a little bit more about how whole foods and raw foods and healthy things played a predominant role. So thanks for watching and have a beautiful day.